Hey everybody, it's Khan Moshuri, performance coach and kinesiologist. We're here with Greatness Bound podcast, and I'm so excited because I have I'm honored to be here with an amazing author, Linda Kohanov. Let me give a little introduction. Linda is an author, speaker, riding instructor, and horse trainer who has become an internationally recognized innovator in the field of equine. Am I saying it right?
Equine, yes.
Yeah, equine experiential learning, and a respected writer on the subject of equine facilitated psychotherapy. Her book, The Tao of Equus, a woman's journey of healing and transformation through the way of the horse, was selected as one of the top 10 religion and spirituality books of 2001 by Amazon.com. Their second book, Riding Between the Worlds, Expanding Our Potential Through the Ways of the Horse, was published in 2003. That was the book I read, and I was shocked. There is such a thing out there for people, and such an access. People work through their traumas and their experiences, and it was an amazing book for me. And then she wrote. The last book was the five roles of master herder.
Yes.
Right? And the first and second book was used as text in university courses across the country and have received appreciative reviews in diverse publications. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, letting us come here. I know
Yes,
you had
welcome.
a super busy day, and I'm very grateful to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here at our headquarters here in Arizona.
Is this your house?
Yes, it's my house as well as the place where we hold workshops in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And we bought the property because of the horse property and the beauty of nature and the views of the mountains. And the energy here is really astonishing. And I just prefer to live on site with my horses. So my husband, who's a composer and recording artist, his name is Steve Roach.
Mm-hmm.
We also have another house about a half an hour from here for him to do his music work,
Mm-hmm.
because we have a lot of workshops here. So
That's
you know,
amazing.
he needs a space to create the music he creates, and sometimes we combine forces and do workshops together.
It's I don't want to say it's a fresh idea, because it's been out there. Equine therapy has been out there for how many years?
Well, equine therapy for persons with physical disabilities has been out for over 50 years.
Okay.
You know, so we often think of people who've had some kind of trauma, physical trauma,
Mm-hmm.
doing therapeutic riding.
Okay.
And so a lot of times people ask me, oh, do you do riding for people with disabilities? And no, that's not what I do. What I do is I teach people who are able-bodied, for the most part. I mean, sometimes I work with people with disabilities,
Mm-hmm.
but able-bodied people who want to learn how to excel in life. And so we work on emotional, mental, spiritual, transformational elements, leadership, and we also work with people who, in conjunction with a therapist, will work with people who've had serious trauma in the form of rape or sexual abuse or post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
With some veterans we've worked with, absolutely. So mostly what we're doing is we're teaching people how to become more mentally, emotionally, and spiritually balanced.
That's amazing. It's amazing. So let's just start from the beginning. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe Linda Kohanov?
That's an interesting question. I've never had to ask
I
that
know
before.
that's usually my first question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just feel like I'm a person who's interested in what lies beyond words.
Mm.
So throughout my many different careers, I was a music critic for many years. I have a degree in music.
Okay.
And so music is also a place where we go to express things that are not so easy to put into words. And I was a music critic for many years. So I actually, as a writer, learned how to describe the feeling and the emotional import and the spiritual transformational qualities of music through writing as a music critic. And so that kind of set me up for when I started to work with horses and write about how horses affect us at a really deep level, that I was able to translate into words some things that many people feel and have experienced, but have never had the words to express. And again, words only touch a small amount of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
You just use the words to point to
Yeah.
something deeper.
It's really hard to explain transformation. There's like a switch happens that moment, and I think you did an amazing job in that. I read the Writing Between the Worlds, and I love that book with the archetypes. We use it, and it's great. And you're right, explaining it's really hard, and I want to see how we can get people into this practice. I want to see how it's possible to make it more accessible to people, so you can understand the practice. So, how did you? Where was your transformation that you got so inspired by this work?
In terms of working with horses.
Yeah. So to transformation with horses. And how did that happen? I want to know that. I want to hear the personal story behind that.
Sure. I mean, that is the subject of my first book, The
Yeah.
Tao of Equus, A Woman's Journey of Healing and Transformation Through the Way of the Horse. The whole book is about that. It was a long process that was happening over, that book probably takes place over the course of between 6 and 10 years. And
Wow.
I was a music critic at the time, and I was also working in radio. And people were driving me crazy.
Okay.
You know, you live in LA, you're around a lot of probably artistic and ambitious people.
Yes.
And they can be very eccentric. And there
Yes.
can be rather large egos bouncing around.
Yes.
In addition to good reason for some of these people being well known, because they're able to express something deep that moves people, you
Right.
know? And so I needed to get away from the craziness of humanity. And I thought, I really just want to buy a horse and ride into the desert. It's easy to keep a horse here in the Tucson area because you don't need barns. It never really gets cold enough that you would need a barn. The horses prefer to have larger corrals and
Right.
and pastures. And so I bought a horse, and
Do you mind if I ask you how old were you at the time?
I was in my 30s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and this is part of the reason why I understood what was going on and could communicate what was going on, is because I came to working with horses later in life and had already learned how to describe experiences beyond words by being a music critic. And so when I started to have this transformation happening and these feelings come up and these shifts coming up through working with horses, I was able to log this and write it down when others, many people have these experiences with horses. They just don't have the experience of having to write about what's beyond words.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I bought a horse, and I thought, I'm just going to ride into the desert, get away from everybody, everything.
Yeah.
And this horse started to show me areas of emotional and physical imbalance that I had. That
In your body.
in my body and in my attitudes, in the way that I would use power, or I guess at that time abdicate power. You have to be really powerful to work with a horse, not in the sense of power over or abusive power,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to be able to influence someone who weighs 1,000 pounds. And you have to be able to gain their trust,
Yeah.
but also direct them to, move forward in a way that's organized. Just even riding down the trail, you have to make sure that the horse isn't, hyper-stimulated by everything
Right.
around them. That they're focused, that you help them calm down and get focused to move forward. And if you have a trail horse that, has been on a trail riding string and is kind of like sort of dissociative and kind of dead to the world because they've been used like a machine, that's one thing. But if you have a horse that's alive and awake and you're taking them down the trail, now you're dealing with somebody you have to gain their trust, center yourself, and then also move through fear or resistance that the horse may be having. And so that requires a tremendous amount of a trustworthy presence that's centered, that looks at their concerns without overly focusing on their fear or catching their fear. In some sense, riding a horse is about fear management, managing the fear of an animal who's walking into the desert away from their herd with you as their only ally in that situation. There's coyotes and mountain lions and rattlesnakes, you know. So what I found was that in the human world, I had been engaged in what I would call positional leadership situations, or positional influence.
What does that mean?
So I'm a music critic.
Okay.
You know, and people are nice to me and listening to me because I can give them a good review on an album.
Wow.
Or because I know really famous people. People are, you know.
There's an exchange.
Yeah, there's like something they respect in you and want from you because of your position.
Right.
You know, but when you're with a horse, it doesn't matter what your degree is in. It doesn't matter how much your cowboy boots cost, or
Right.
what kind of fancy shirt you're wearing or not wearing. They don't care whether you're a man or a woman, or whether you've grown up in privilege, or whether you're dirt poor. If you have actual leadership presence and the presence to center and focus and form an alliance with this animal, then you've got them. But other than that, you know, you get to see how false the influence we have with humans really is. It's related to position and influence and doing favors and having people think that they can get something from you or from knowing you.
Yeah, what you're saying, I remember when I was raised around horses, and I was raised in Iran. There was war. There was so much different form of abuse was happening at the time, and my escape was horses. And when I was 7 years old, I was sexually abused, and from there I became this introvert person, and my escape was the horse. I would go there and I would communicate with them, and that was how I actually make it through my probably the early years of my childhood, and then it got bad after that till everything transformed. But
Wow.
I totally understand when you say how horse is so authentic and it reflects based on your feelings and senses. There is no language, there is no wording around it. It's like take it or leave it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, one of the most wonderful things about horses is that they are powerful, but they're not predators.
Mm.
And so you who
It's
have
tamed.
experienced predatory behavior from humans who abused you,
Mhm.
you know, or who hurt you, or who went to war, or who engaged in the sexual abuse, that is predatory behavior in humans.
Right.
And to meet an animal that's large and powerful but is absolutely non-predatory is a revelation. They can be trusted in ways that you can't trust a
Yeah.
human. And their psychology is different. And so a lot of times you'll hear people say that humans are predators and horses are prey animals.
Mhm.
You'll hear that a lot in natural horsemanship circles. But the truth of the matter is that humans are omnivores. We have the teeth of a vegetarian. We have the capacity to engage in...
Are you vegetarian or vegan?
No,
Yeah,
I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm an omnivore for
Omnivore,
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, we also have the eyes forward. Lions and tigers and
Right.
animals like that have their eyes looking forward, which is characteristic of a predator, being very focused and goal-oriented. Whereas horses have eyes more on the side of their head, so they can actually see 340 degrees of 360 degrees around them. They have the wide view. And they also are powerful and fully capable of protecting themselves and their herd mates. But at the same time, they don't stalk and kill others. They can protect themselves, and they can chase off lions
Yeah.
and other animals.
Yeah.
These
Hey,
are a couple
doggies.
of little predators I have here.
Yeah.
These dogs.
Mm. It's okay. Oh, it's all good.
So, you know,
Speaking of predator.
predators are actually highly territorial.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
So these two dogs are very predatory. And they are also highly territorial. So one of these dogs owns the downstairs basically, and one owns the upstairs.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what we have going on here is
Yeah, that's my
a
home,
territorial discussion.
Yeah.
This is little Micah.
Hey, Micah.
And so these, you know, we live among predators, you
Yeah.
know, dogs and cats and other animals are predatory companions.
Yeah.
And very few of our animal companions are actually not predators, if you think
Yeah.
about it. I mean,
Yeah.
even dolphins
Mhm.
are predatory.
Yeah.
So to be in the presence of a large, powerful, non-predatory animal is to understand a whole other side of a whole other way of being powerful in the world.
Right.
And so that's what I learned from horses over time: how to be powerful, how to protect myself, how to protect others,
Stand your ground, yeah.
stand my ground, but not in a predatory way.
Yeah, that's great. So, can you share us a memorable or a story, something that you never forget from working with a client and the horse was there, something happened that was just, you know, it's, I don't know.
Sure. So this is I had an experience pretty early on with the ability of, I could see that horses were picking up the emotions of their handlers,
Mhm.
their riders, their, you know, trainers, and the horses would sometimes act out the emotion that a person was hiding.
Mhm.
And I thought, how is that even possible? You know, and we've since seen some scientific research that suggests that, or that proves that emotion is contagious between sentient beings.
Mhm.
And that, so for instance, a human who's being taught to suppress emotion, what happens when you suppress emotion is it causes your blood pressure to rise because you're spending a lot of energy stuffing an emotion.
Mhm.
And they've done studies to show that when a person is suppressing emotion in a group of people,
Yeah.
that not only does that person's blood pressure rise, but the blood pressure of everybody interacting with that person rises also. And normally this is happening at an unconscious level.
Yeah.
But what happens is that horses are reading the emotions of others. They use emotion as information.
Mhm.
And that's something that I learned from them. And they can tell at a distance what emotion someone is feeling because different emotions have different kinds of charges to them. They've even shown now with the Institute of Heart Math that the emotion of frustration, when you hook someone up to a heart rate monitor, shows a certain pattern or frequency, and the emotion of anger has a different pattern or frequency, and the emotion of appreciation has a still different one.
Yeah.
You know, so horses appear to be able to pick that up, and they use it purposefully. It's meaningful to them. Whereas humans try to fool each other. They try to wear a mask of one emotion while suppressing one that they consider to be socially unacceptable or would make them too vulnerable to perhaps someone taking advantage of them. And so it was astonishing to me in the beginning that I could see when somebody what emotional state that person was in. Even if I said, "Oh, how are you doing?" They'd be like, "Oh, I'm fine." But I could see by how their horse was dancing around next to them that they were actually nervous or they had had a bad day.
Right.
And another thing I noticed was that when a person was would say what emotion they were feeling, like if they really owned it, that the horse would calm down. You know, because now we know when someone's suppressing an emotion, it causes the blood pressure to rise. So if you stop suppressing an emotion, even if you haven't done anything about it, it drops your blood pressure. And then the horse goes, "Oh, thank you." You know. So I began to use this, or just notice the phenomenon. And horses don't like to be around humans when they're what we call incongruent, which means you're wearing a mask of one emotion and suppressing another.
Mhm.
That's considered sneaky or untrustworthy, and it causes your blood pressure to rise. They just don't want to be around you. And so I had this young woman who had been raped, and she was in with one of the horses, and she was accessing this memory, and was crying. She started to cry, and the horse who had been standing with her just a moment earlier just went and walked off.
Wow.
She's like, she was stunned. I mean, it seemed like the horse was rejecting her tears and rejecting her story. That's how she took it at first. And I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't think so. Because the horse was with you, and then you started to cry and tell about how you felt sad and hurt, and then the horse just,
Walked off.
walked off. So I think what it means is that you're hiding, there's another emotion underneath those tears. And I said, can you go underneath the tears and tell me what else you're feeling as a result of this violation? And she said, I'm actually really angry. And I mean, the emotion of anger means that somebody has violated your boundaries.
Right.
It is a legitimate emotion to feel in that situation in particular. And there was a fence post there, and she started to talk about how angry she was at this violation, and how her life had been turned upside down, and how she couldn't trust anybody. And she was pounding her fist on the fence post while she was talking about this. And that horse came right back over and surrounded her, almost like as a horse hug, while she was feeling and expressing the anger. She wasn't taking the anger out on the horse. The horse would have been out of there. But when she was crying and talking about, how sad it was and what a victim she was, the horse was like, no, lady, you're angry. And
Right.
until you access
Get
that
to it.
anger, I'm going to be out over here.
When you're ready.
Yeah, and when you're ready, you let me know.
Yeah.
So that was amazing, wasn't it?
That's amazing.
So horses don't really, they don't judge what we're feeling. They judge, if we take out strong emotions on them, of course they're out of there. But if we're simply getting in touch with what we're feeling, they're with us.
Yeah.
They want to be there with us. So we don't have to be happy all the time for them. We don't have to be, filled with love and appreciation. They want us to experience the full range of emotions as information. And negative emotions are simply course-correcting emotions. That's all they are.
That's amazing. When I was, what happened to me at the age of 7, so the kid didn't know what to do. So I didn't talk to anyone, I didn't have the tools at the time, so I suppressed it. And I always carried this sense of fear with me since then. And when I was 12 years old, I was getting ready for the national jumping competition. And this fear, it was just all over my body. It's like, I'm not going to be ready for this in 3 weeks. And we were doing gymnastics in the corral. I remember I could feel the horses feeling my fear. That was the day I fell down twice back to back and broke my shoulder. And when I go back, it was like it was me that fell down. It was the horse's fault. The horse was like responding to the feeling. So that makes sense based on what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things you could have done that would have helped it a bit is to just simply let the horse know you were afraid.
Yeah.
And then you would have become congruent. And
It wasn't like there was like, get up, get on the horse.
Right,
It was
right.
not like that, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
people are often taught, well, don't show a horse that you're afraid. Well, you can't
Yeah.
hide it from the horse.
Yeah.
If you're afraid, you can't hide it from the
Yeah.
horse. So you might as well just let them know that you have the message behind fear is there's some kind of safety concern.
Yeah.
And so if you say, I'm afraid, let me look at what the concern is here, and then you problem solve to move to a position of safety, that's the constructive way to deal with fear. But to suppress it is to make your blood pressure go even higher and to cause the horse's blood pressure to rise.
Yeah.
You can't hide it unless you're a sociopath.
Yeah.
Sociopath, in general, they have a limited ability to feel emotions. That's why a lot of times you'll see sociopaths and psychopaths attracted to situations where people are experiencing extreme fear and pain, because they're trying to feel something. They're trying to get an emotional charge. They take huge risks because they don't feel fear like the average person does. They have like an emotionally repressed or disabled system in that sense.
Yeah, it's completely under control by something else. Yeah, it's amazing. Oh my God. All
And
right,
horses
here.
generally don't like sociopaths that much.
Yeah.
There's something off about them,
Yeah.
and they don't trust them.
They weren't trusted.
And so,
Yeah. I struggled with communicating with horse a lot as a kid too. I went back to it 4 weeks ago for the first time.
oh wow.
And I started again. It was a completely different experience. And it was really good. Really good. Okay. All right. Who were your models and people who you were inspired by throughout your transformation time?
I have to go back to historical figures. Not so many. There weren't so many people who were around me during that time that were mentors to me, because I was interested in working with the horse as a sentient being, and in the 1990s, horses were considered virtually machines. You know, it was even argued that they didn't have emotions. That's since been proven wrong. It's been shown that all animals do have emotions. But back in the 1990s, most trainers would treat the horse like a bag of instincts or a machine-like being. And so when I started to see that horses could actually mirror other people's emotions and tell when we were incongruent and be warm and accepting to a rape survivor who was experiencing anger, a lot of people thought I was really out there. It's since been shown, there are a lot of studies and experiences now, and many more books have been written about animals as sentient, wise beings, and beings capable of being teachers of humans. But back then, nobody wanted to hear that from me. And when the Tao of Equus came out, I had a lot of people who were pretty close friends and colleagues of mine step way back, because what I was putting out in the world was considered really scary to a lot of people.
It's very bold and courageous.
Yeah. So you could see by the title of my first book, The Tao of Equus, that I was really influenced by Taoist philosophy.
The Tao.
And so they say that the Tao, the Jing, was written by Lao Tzu, but they don't really know who that is. It could even be a pen name for a group of anonymous sages, they say. So it was either a sage, or it was a group of sages who were studying Taoism at that time. But what I found was that horses were actually natural Taoists. And so a lot of the things in the Taoist religion were actually explaining the behavior of horses to me. And as I went on too, I also was very influenced by the teachings of the Buddha. And I found that the Buddha was considered an exceptional horseman.
Wow.
Yeah, and so as I was working with horses over the years, I began to learn high-level mindfulness skills, just being with the animals, that are considered more magical things that you would learn as advanced forms of mindfulness and meditation. And then when I started to study those parallels in the Buddhist tradition, I learned that the Buddha was considered one of the finest horsemen who ever lived. And I believe that he learned a lot of the skills early in his career through working with horses, and then later translated some of that wisdom into things he could give to humans directly. And so in my fourth book, The Power of the Herd, I bring that up and I talk about that quite a bit, and show how some of the skills related to mindfulness with the Buddha were things he could have easily learned with horses, particularly really aggressive horses. And the way that happened is that I also had to work with a really aggressive, abused horse, a black stallion by the name of Midnight Merlin. And he taught me to use advanced forms of mindfulness in order to shift his aggressive behavior. So
that's amazing.
It was amazing and scary.
Amazing.
Scary. Talk about scary.
Something came up when you said when you put out the book at the time, a lot of people backed off. And it happens in different form with different people, with my clients, and I tell them, when you put yourself out there, there's going to be some clinging. Some people leave, and the right people fall into. How was your experience when these people left? Did they come back, or the right people fell into the space?
Both. Some of them came back later, but also the right people fell into place. This has happened to me several times, actually. Yes. So when I wrote The Tao of Equus, a lot of the riders and trainers who I had formed partnerships with early on, they stepped way back, and they didn't even really want to talk to me. They didn't want to be associated with me. It was too scary what I was putting out there. And since then, a lot of other books have been written where that book seems pretty normal now. But when I put it out there, it was extremely uncommon to talk about the things I was talking about. The spiritual side of working with horses. And So then I had several books, including Riding Between the Worlds and The Way of the Horse, where I had this whole following then internationally of people coming and studying with me and learning how to teach this work and take it back to their own countries and communities and do the same kind of work. And then I wrote The Power of the Herd, which is subtitled A Non-Predatory Approach to Social Intelligence, Leadership, and Innovation. And as part of that book, I was analyzing leadership and power throughout history across multiple cultures. And so I'm looking at, in some cases, misused male-dominant power. But I needed to look at it because I had to work with a stallion that would have killed me if I hadn't been able to use some form of power. And so I started to write about how we all need to have power and use it and share it, but use it in a way that's not about power over or dominant submission.
No dictatorship.
But just the fact that I was studying power, a bunch of people who were into the women's journey of transformation also stepped way back and said, we don't want to hear anything about men and we don't want to know anything about power. You know, so I had this whole new cycle of people stepping back and abandoning what I was doing. Some of whom then came back around and said, okay, now I understand.
Very good,
You
yeah.
know, and I mean, I was looking at different kinds of leaders who were influential across multiple political traditions. So, you know, I looked at Ronald Reagan because he was an exceptional horseman. He got a lot of his skills from working with horses, and he had actually been in the U.S. cavalry. Well, then I had people who were totally against Reagan and his policies, like not reading any further in the book. But I'm not for Reagan's policies either. I'm not oriented in that direction. But he still had to be looked at as someone of influence, and we still have to look at what are the characteristics of influence and power, and how does this play out, you know? And so I was looking across multiple religions and multiple political traditions, and people didn't like that I was willing to look at, you know, even I also talked about power in Christianity and Buddhism and
Right.
Taoism, and people, I don't know, it's like they want you to take one side or another, and I think we have to really look at
Yeah.
multiple traditions and perspectives and see what's underneath that. What is the power and influence underneath someone's philosophy that causes them to be able to promote that philosophy? That's what I'm interested in.
That is very powerful. That is very powerful. Okay. Oh, this question came up yesterday. I was talking to a friend about the void. The void and how, I mean, first is like addiction is like there's drugs, and then becomes food, and becomes TV shows, and becomes little conversations, there's the phone calls, and we want to know how you deal with the voids, with those moments that you have to face your feelings, and when there is no explanation and you have to do your practice. What are your tools, and do you still deal with them? Are they gone? What's your input?
Well, I actually did a pretty significant and transformational meditation on the void with one of my greatest horse teachers. Her name is Tabula Rasa, which means clean slate. She was a black Arabian mare. And let me see if I can remember this off the top. This is what the meditation turned out. This is what she told me through an exchange, and then this was kind of translated into words. The wisdom of the void is dark and formless. It resists the light of logic and can never be seduced by language, yet it cannot be ignored. When a woman feels this hollowness in her womb, her first impulse is to fill it with a child. But once the first child is born, the space is there for another and another and another, until she realized she could be overcome by a rowdy brood of children over time, but never satisfy the hunger of the emptiness inside. When a man feels the hollowness of the void in his soul, his impulse might be to fill it with the bounties of the world. But once the first car is bought, the space is there for another and another and another, a much larger abode with 10 classic sports cars in the garage and a harem of beautiful women laying by the pool, until he realizes that he could conquer the entire world and yet never satisfy this craving of the emptiness deep inside. This is the painful truth of the void. It cannot be filled from the outside in. It must be filled from the inside out. And yet any attempt to do so offers only temporary relief.
Yeah.
The hunger of the void is the call to create, to name what has not been named, to bring into form that which has no form. It cannot be satiated ever. Universes must expand, new poetry must be written, new perspectives must be brought into form in every possible mode of existence, and that is the Creator's wish. For those of us made in this image, biological procreation cannot begin to soothe our restless souls, for we have the capacity to create new worlds of our own. The universe, then, is artistic, not opportunistic. Opportunists are compelled to own what has already been created. Creators create what does not yet exist. And so when we're in those places where we feel empty, then we start to feel our feelings coming in. And then we start to feel a calling to create something new, And if we avoid that, we can engage in all kinds of addictions, including, spending addictions, romance addictions, all kinds of drug addictions. And we have to get comfortable feeling empty. Yeah. And we have to get comfortable learning how to bring into form that which is formless. Because we are creators, and until we own that, we continue to suffer. Yeah. And you suffer when you're a creator too, because to bring something that hasn't been formed yet into form is painful. Yeah. But it's the calling we have.
But there's also meaning, and there's a power to it for me. For me, it's like every time, a lot of time I mess it up, but a lot of times that I catch it, there's a void. I look at it as an invitation. I'll sit with it. I was like, give me the message. I want to see what can come out of this. For me, it's more like that. Yeah. I got chills from what we were saying right now.
Well, it's funny you would ask me that, because it's something that that I wrote more or less that piece, and I do sometimes read it at workshops where we do some work with the idea of the void, and what is that, and how do you learn to work with it. And the void is also the unknown.
The unknown.
It's what comes up when you enter into a situation or a stage of growth, right, where all your old coping strategies and beliefs about yourself and the nature of reality are suddenly challenged. And it feels like the rug is pulled out from under you and you're staring into the void. And so, anytime we step into the unknown, we're going to feel fear, of course, but this is where you need to have a certain level of heroism to accept the gift of being a creator and innovator yourself.
Yeah. So beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these questions are not good enough. Hold on a second. Okay, these are really shallow. Hold on a second. Let me cut them up.
No, it's okay. Anything's good.
So, I know that you work with a lot of women, so you know their struggles and pains, and I get a lot of clients who there's this pressure of getting married. And there's a relationship with feeling adequate, there's this external pressure. And what would be your message to them? There's this, the parents, they think they should get married, there's the society, and there's this story, self-made story in their head that you have to get them married by 30 to 35, whatever the case is. Mm-hmm. And what would be your message to them?
To women or men, or both? Is it mostly the women that you're finding the pressure to get married?
Yeah, I have clients that coach a lot. I can feel like they really self-create this story that they have to be married, and they're running out of time. And I think it's a big thing that is happening in society, and I wanted to hear from you. You had experience helping with women a lot, and I want to see what is your message.
Well, I understand the urge to get married for those who want to have children. So, there is a time limit if you want to have children in a woman. Not so much in a man, so you have a little more time.
Right.
So if somebody has a real urge to have children, and I meet people, and that does feel like their calling. They really want to have children and be with them and raise them and you know, bring them into the world in the best possible way. But if that's not your goal, or if you're ambiguous about children, or doesn't feel like your real calling, I think that, you know, taking some time, I mean, our culture is more free now than it was in the 1960s. With women, you weren't allowed to date or have a long-term relationship or live with somebody. You were considered, you know, a scarlet woman or something.
Right.
So now that's been lifted and that's free. So you can have a lot of different relationships and find the right one over time. I think that the urge to be married is the urge to also be accepted and loved for who you are. You know, to find that one person who's really going to offer that. And you can also find that through friendships, and you can find it for yourself. And having a vision and learning how to be empowered and how to move through the world and how to be connected to others. These are things that people can really exercise through working with horses and find that they suddenly feel centered and independent and also connected without the idea of, you know, always needing a romantic relationship. So I think the answer for a lot of women who want to get married is it a real, sincere calling for you to have children? If so, look for someone who is interested in that too. Because I meet a lot of women who get married and then find out their husband doesn't want to have children.
Right.
And that's often divorce,
Yeah.
you know, material. But other than that, I just think now's the time for women to be able to experiment and have relationships and find out what kind of relationship they really want to have, and not worry about marriage right away.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. What is your mission in life? If you believe in that, you know.
Yeah, I definitely have a calling here. It is. It's definitely tied with the horses, and it's one of those things that's hard to put into words. But it's really about having everyone become whole, so physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually balanced, and able to access all those parts of yourself, but also empowered, but in such a way that we all learn how to be powerful together. And we've just come out of at least 5,000 years of dominant submission systems around the world, not just in the West, but in the East. And the challenge of the 21st century is to learn how to be powerful together. And so here we are stepping into the void together. We don't really have the skills for consensual leadership, trading leadership roles, leading together, collaborating, building everybody up, rather than feeling like if you start to become empowered and find your true calling, that it's going to diminish me. We need to learn how to raise each other up rather than do this thing where, you know, I can't be empowered if you are. And we're going to get into power plays. And I mean, I spend huge amounts of time studying the various kinds of power plays that occur in the world. Even among those people, usually very gentle, sweet, spiritually oriented women will say they're not interested in power, and I watch them engage in all kinds of unconscious power plays with each other, and it's very damaging. So we have to learn how to bring power out into the open, and we need to learn how to tame it, you know, but not tame it in terms of killing the spirit of something, but in terms of socializing it, making it so that it can be a part of a social organization rather than, you know, use power over or be predatory or to be more powerful at somebody else's expense. So that's my secret hidden mission, is to help everyone be powerful and to be powerful together.
That's great. That's great. Thanks. Let's see. Okay, I was going to ask you this question. What kind of question would someone like you want me to ask you? Makes sense? That you want people to know that you normally don't get asked.
I don't know.
I did a great job, maybe.
You
I
did a
covered
great
everything.
job. I mean, you even asked about the void. I mean, nobody asked about that. That was a
Yeah.
great one.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
I mean, I even had something to say about that.
That was great. I got goosebumps on that one. It's so good. Yeah.
I'm open to anything, really.
Okay. Who do you want to come to see your work more? What kind of people that you think you want to reach out more?
Well, right now we do a lot of work with people who are, we do a combination of, individual development and transformation. And then we also work with teaching emotional and social intelligence skills and leadership skills to, corporations, to nonprofits, to political organizations. One of the things that I would like to see right now more that's currently untapped and there's a real need for it is to have more people who are interested in some kind of social change going through this program, because there are a lot of tools that we have that I can see watching TV on a daily operations or simply social change, bringing forth some kind of social issue. They don't really have the skills that we can offer that are very easy to learn in working with horses. So, once you go out into the world and you're promoting some kind of social cause or political cause, you need some additional skills, because when you're out there, you get attacked from all possible angles. You can see it, right, on the news? So people need to learn how to be powerful and centered, but not attack back, but not to shrink. And the horses can teach you to do that.
Yeah.
So we have people work with increasingly more powerful and more dominant horses. And what you do is you learn a lot of nonverbal techniques for handling the aggression, for de-escalating it, and for gaining the trust of a being that is normally used to bullying others. You also learn how to help those who are intensely fearful and act out. You learn how to help them calm down and be focused. And we actually learn how to translate these skills to human situations and use them conversationally. So once you've stood up to a really powerful stallion that's coming at you and trying to attack you, and I learned through some mindfulness techniques that I can teach now, I learned how to calm the horse down through breathing, body posture, and ways of setting boundaries with the horse, while also helping the horse to learn that they can feel rewarded for calming down for just a moment, and learn what that really feels like, rather than to attack or be attacked. And so we can translate that into working with people, and it changes families, it changes societies, and it changes people who are working with teenagers who are out of control, as well as aggressive people at work or in the political system.
I think it's amazing. You have all these different horses. They respond differently for different. So you match them with different personalities. It's everything. And do you also ride them, or they just particularly for therapy?
Well, I don't really ride so much anymore. I'm just not that interested. I used to ride a lot, but I'm so interested in the stuff that I'm doing now,
It's a different world.
working with the horses.
Yeah.
And the kinds of things we do with horses, people are working with the horses on the ground.
Yeah.
And so today you came here, and I have a group of people who are doing a 9-day training to become instructors in this work. And they're out there right now, and they're actually dancing with the horses on the ground.
That's amazing.
And creating it's really like a co-creative, improvisational conversation through movement.
Yep.
So you really learn how to dance with the horses themselves, but you're also learning how to dance with power. You're learning how to dance with life as you're doing this.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't consider this therapy. I would consider this advanced human development work. So we do some therapy, but really our orientation is to work with people who are ready to excel in life and give them the tools they need
That's
to
exactly
really
what I want to hear.
take it to the next level.
Perfect. Okay, I think I covered almost everything. Did I ask you, how do you define consciousness?
No.
Okay, let's define consciousness. How do you define it? Because I ask everyone when I interview, see, everyone has different answers.
Well, there's kind of a macro level of consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like a shared consciousness, the consciousness, you know, that expresses itself through form, you know.
Mhm.
So in some sense, you know, there's a greater consciousness to the universe, you know, because when I was talking about the universe as artistic, not opportunistic,
Mhm.
that implies some kind of a consciousness that's trying to express itself. And that higher consciousness that we might call God or the creator or the universal intelligence or the great mystery has some kind of intentionality. It has some level of caring, some level of experimentation and artistry, and constant innovation. But you know, so that we can see the entire universe as expressions of different aspects of this universal artist.
Right.
And not any one work of art is the totality of the artist. Just as, you know, if you're creating a work of art or a piece of music, not one piece of music or one piece of art describes who you are in your totality. So then think of the entire universe as an artist, and we get to see different little shades of who this artist is. And this artist is creating living works of art that are also conscious, that are creative in themselves,
Right.
you know. And consciousness in an individual is the part of you that, you know, has awareness and sentience and memory. And we can expand that consciousness by also paying attention to those things that are nonverbal, and horses help us do that. And, you know, actually, they studied human communication in the 1990s and determined that only about 10% of human communication is verbal. So 90% of the messages we send back and forth to each other are in the nonverbal range, you know. So when we're only paying attention to words and we're only reading words and we're only discussing through words, we're not conscious of everything that's possible to be conscious of.
Right.
So in working with horses, what I've learned is that you can be also conscious of things that are completely beyond words. And so we actually teach people. I was just teaching a group of people this yesterday. And I had a man from a major, this man was a rocket scientist.
Wow.
And we have a major player in the missile building industry come here and teach their leaders, their engineers, how to be leaders through working with horses.
It's amazing.
And these are brilliant people. They are literally our rocket scientists, but they're not aware of anything beyond words or mathematical figures, right?
Yeah.
Or diagrams that, you know, or whatever. And so then when they're promoted to a leadership position, now they have to start paying attention to interactions
Emotions,
with
yeah.
others. Emotions and body postures and the way you're affecting somebody and the way that you're motivating somebody and listening to somebody.
Such a good point.
And so this man came out to do the work with the horses, and he was really nervous about it. And I thought, you know, are you afraid of horses? Did you have a bad experience with horses? And he says, no, that's not it. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, well, you're talking about nonverbal communication, and that makes me very nervous. And I said, what do you mean? And he says, well, I don't want to go unconscious. And I said, oh, I see.
You mean conscious?
You're thinking that if you go nonverbal, then you go unconscious, and that's not true. You can be aware of all kinds of things going on in the environment and in yourself and in another being that you would struggle for years to put into words, but you can see what's happening, and you can actually draw the information in through your senses, take it up to your neocortex, make a decision about it, and then send it back down into action without ever translating it into words. So when you're able to do that, be conscious of what is nonverbal and use it purposefully, and even engage in what I call sentient communication, then your consciousness expands.
Right.
You know, and so
That was so cool.
yeah. So there's lots of definitions, but there's also intersubjective consciousness.
Right.
You know?
I just want to make sure I got this right. So when the information comes in, you may not to label it, not put word on it. And
Yeah, or not even to bother, not even to, you can be so aware of what's happening and fully conscious and be
Right.
able to make decisions,
Right.
but not for one moment does anything get translated into words.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So, you know, with the horses, you learn to do that.
Yeah.
The horse is coming towards you or doing something, and you learn how to read what is happening and change your body posture and breathe and engage, and you don't waste a split second of time translating it into words, but the entire interaction is fully conscious, like a conversation,
It's great.
you know.
Yeah.
But horses show us that consciousness is also shared,
Shared.
you know.
It's a field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they also teach you to become conscious of, you know, the energy fields surrounding the body. You can actually learn to use that as a form of communication.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anything you want to share or add to this amazing experience that you allowed us to have?
Well, I think for those who are watching this, you can go to a little video I did on YouTube.
Okay.
And I give an example of one of these things that appears to be mystical in interacting with horses that we teach people all the time here.
Okay.
And it's an experience that I call heart breathing, and it's where you can, at a pretty significant distance, as you're breathing out, send this feeling of your heart energy going into the heart of the horse, and as you breathe in, have this image of drawing the heart energy of the horse into your heart, and you can get a horse's attention at a distance and have the horse walk over to you without moving a muscle or saying a word. And I actually show this on YouTube. I had an experience where I demonstrated this in front of a group of people, and I had a horse do this. And so this is one of those things that you might say is a mystical experience or a magical experience, but it's not. It's something that can be reproduced and it can be taught, you know, and it is a way of expanding consciousness and recognizing that you can have an influence at a distance that, you know, 30 years ago would have sounded crazy or impossible, and 150 years ago you could have been burned at the stake for showing, you know, it's some kind of magic. So horses just show us that there's magic in life, but it can be reproduced, and it can be a normal part of interacting with others. So if you go to YouTube and you look up my name, Kohanov, K-O-H-A-N-O-V as in Victor,
Okay.
and you put in the words heart breathing on YouTube, you'll see that video, and it
Heart
shows,
breathing.
yeah, heart breathing, and
Okay.
it shows some images of the horses that we work with here and this beautiful property, and then it shows me doing heart breathing with a horse and having a horse turn and look at me and walk over to me.
That's amazing.
And that just shows you the
I wanna
potential
watch that, yeah.
of sentient communication and what the horses have to teach us, and we're just at the edge of what they have to teach us.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, yeah. Okay, so for people who want to get to know you more with your work and want to communicate with you, I wrote down eponaquest.com. Epona.
EponaQuest.com.
EPONAQUEST.com.
Yes, yeah. EP as in Paul, O,
Okay.
N as in Nick, A, QUEST.com. Epona is the Celtic god of horses and transformation.
That's great.
So that's why I call it EponaQuest.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that was all my questions. Do you have a question for me?
So you said you just started working with horses again?
Yes, well, I went through this phase of being vegan for 6 years. That was, I think, it's a year and a half, 2 years I came out. I had this belief that we should not be riding horses. And that changed. I'm back eating, you know, my perspective changed now. But I always think, I was always wondering if I can communicate with horse in a way that I can jump again, because I love jumping.
Mm-hmm.
But would it be possible to do it in a way that me and the horse have a camaraderie experience, do this together all the time? It would be something that he or she would be interested. So that's something that I'm looking at right now, if that's a possibility. And I was going to ask you the same question too, if that's something it's possible
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
You know, there is a whole movement of people out there now, you'll see them on the internet sometimes, who believe that horses should not be ridden.
Right.
And I've actually, I don't really care that much for riding right now. I have enjoyed it in the past.
Yeah.
It's just not an urge in me, so I'm not riding.
Yeah.
I like to work with horses on the ground. I like to
Yeah.
dance with horses. I like to work with them as colleagues,
Yeah.
you know, in the work of human development. But I have had several horses, at least 3, that love nothing more than to be ridden. And some horses love to do trail riding, and some horses are natural jumpers and love to jump. And I've actually had to find good homes for those horses because being here, and I had to pay someone to ride these horses because I wasn't in the mood to ride them,
Right.
because they would get depressed. They like it, you
They
know.
love movement.
It's like, and, you know, and some people are like, well, you're on their back or whatever, and, you know, it's like, well, you know, some people like to go backpacking. They find ways to put huge, you know, amounts of weight on their back and go trouncing around through the wilderness, and they love
Yeah.
that. You know, it's
Yeah.
not for everyone.
That's what I'm getting now.
You
Last-
know?
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
yeah. Last week I had this amazing horse, and the communication was so clear. He would respond to every single move. And I was like, this never happened in my life before. And every single move he would respond, and he loved it.
Yeah.
Because it was gentle, I wasn't pulling too much, it was just responding properly to every single moves. And it's been 3 weeks, and let's see where it takes us.
Yeah, and I think that if you also spend time with a horse not riding,
Yes,
you know,
I did.
it
I
shouldn't
did,
just
yeah.
be about riding like the horse is a machine or a vehicle
Yes.
for ego gratification.
Yeah.
But if you have a real relationship with a horse like that, and you
Yeah.
find a horse that loves to be ridden,
Yeah,
you know,
it would be great.
it would be great,
Yeah.
and they are out there.
Yeah.
But not every horse likes to be ridden.
That's
Some
true.
horses
I
are being
agree.
forced to be ridden, and they don't
Yeah.
like it.
No, I don't, yes.
You know,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
it's a matter of finding that horse that really lights up.
It's up, yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have.
Yeah. All right. So check out iponaquest.com to get to know more about Lena Kwanov. And thank you so much again for creating this time for us. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Con.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure,
Thank
and
you so much.
good luck with your writing
Thank
and
you.
all of your important work you're doing with
Yeah,
people.
appreciate it. Yeah.